What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So it is now December of 2019, which means that the 2010s are coming to an end, and I'm just going to be talking about the coaster industry in this past decade. What has changed, inventions, innovations, and changes in the coaster industry that makes the end of the 2010s much different than the beginning. So this is Cedar Flags, and I hope you enjoy. So to start this at the early 2010s, we're going to have to go back a little bit, all the way to 1989, where Cedar Point came out with Magnum XL 200. At the time, it was the tallest and fastest coaster in the world from height to base. Other amusement parks envied the roller coaster success so much that it actually kicked off something called the Coaster Wars, who could build the tallest coaster in the world and who could build the fastest in the world. From the 90s to the mid-2000s, coasters came year after year, beating the height record by such a slight amount, making an amusement park get the title of the tallest coaster in the world. But in 2005, this suddenly stopped. In the late 2000s, rides like El Toro at Six Flags, Cedar Point's Maverick, and many of the GCI airtime machines out there shaped what would be the face of the 2010s. And I think this one small change is the biggest change that has shaped the 2010s. See, back in the 2000s and earlier, the coaster wars were about height, speed, and statistics. What looks like the best coaster on paper. Now it's the end of the 2010s, and many of the new best coasters in the world are shorter, have less impressive stats, but have some of the craziest elements on Earth. It's not about the ride stats anymore, it's about the layout. Who has the fastest elements, who has the most unique elements, who has the quickest elements, and who has the best pacing out of any coaster. But we're going to put two coasters next to each other. First of all, we have Desperado at Buffalo Bills in Las Vegas. This is a Morgan Hyper built in the 1990s. And then we're going to pick Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. And this is an RMC that's only 100 feet tall, less than half of how much Desperado is in height. Which coaster is better? Most of you probably are going to think Storm Chaser, and that's because of the overall layout. Even though it's not even half as tall, it has some of the best elements on any coaster on Earth. And even though some of the coasters in the late 2000s kickstarted this trend, it was one company that absolutely blew up this trend in popularity and shaped the 2010s as a whole. In the late 2000s, Six Flags was facing bankruptcy. And to get out of bankruptcy, they decided to go with cheaper options instead of some of the tallest coasters like they used to do. So they hired a brand new company, and they wanted to renovate one of their older coasters, which was called the Texas Giant. Many enthusiasts speculated that this would just be a normal conversion, but believe me when I say this, they started a revolution. They made the Iron Horse treatment popular around the world, and this made some of the best roller coasters that we see today. In these amusement parks where these Iron Horses are, some of these coasters don't even exceed 150 feet, and they're the best rides in the entire park. And that's because of their compact, tiny layouts with all of the tiny little elements packed into it. And they also reached some big coaster milestones. They had the tallest wooden coaster in the world in Goliath, the fastest wooden coaster in the world with a lightning rod, the first wooden coaster to go upside down multiple times with Outlaw Run, and back to lightning rod, that is a wooden launched coaster, and it is the first and only launched wooden coaster on Earth as of right now. In 2018, they came out with their single rail concepts as well. These are all steel, and they are super compact. They only seat one across, but these are absolute powerhouse rides. They have some of the best pacing ever, and the prices of these rides are much cheaper due to the size. And RMC really put a ripple effect on the rest of the coaster community. Instead of focusing on long, drawn-out elements, now they're focusing on fast, quick, snappy elements. Look at Vekoma, for example. That used to be known as one of the worst coaster manufacturers on Earth. And recently, they've made a huge comeback with their new track type. This track type is a lot more flexible than their previous track type, and ever since they made coasters with much snappier elements, including Formula and Aqualantis at Energylandia, Lek Coaster at Legendia, and many others to come, they are world-renowned again. let's talk about the Giga Coaster Boom. While these ride stats were pretty impressive, most of the elements on these rides were pretty compact and had some pretty great forces. And like I said, starting in 2010 is the aforementioned Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. In 2012 came Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. 2015 came Fury 325, and Europe got their first Giga Coaster, which is Red Force at Ferrari Land at Port Aventura in Spain. One big trend was the popularization of the multi-launch, and of course we had coasters like Maverick and Cheetah Hunt that were popular beforehand, but with companies like Mack going on the rise and even Intamin doing this trend, the multi-launch coaster has been more popular than ever. Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure, Soaring with Dragon, Copperhead Strike, Time Traveler, the Skyrocket 2 models, Terran, Tiaga Lenemaki, Full Throttle, Helix, and many of the 2020 coasters, including the aforementioned Aqualantis, Icebreaker at SeaWorld, and Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Bolliger and Mabillard also came out with their Wing Coaster, which was produced all around the world and is still being produced to this day, including a launched Wing Coaster named Thunderbird at Holiday World. We also have the Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, which is basically a souped-up version of the Gerstlauer Eurofighter, which includes Monster at Adventureland, Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm, the Smiler at Alton Towers, which broke the all-time inversion record, and most notably, Die Schwere des Carnen at Hansa Park, which is the only Gerstlauer to exceed 200 feet in height. But there is one last thing I want to talk about in the coaster industry that didn't work as well as other people thought, which was the virtual reality fad, as I like to call it. Six Flags in the mid-2010s thought it would be a great idea to put virtual reality headsets on roller coasters, and a lot of people just complained about it killing the experience. I remember going to SeaWorld Orlando when they picked up their trend on Kraken, and most of the people didn't even use the VR, and some of the dispatches were 5 minutes long. And so, thankfully, this is now most likely a fad. And that was my recap on the 2010s. I think this was a great decade for the coaster industry, and the desire for coasters is just so much different than it was at the beginning. So, as roller coasters evolve, we'll have many more recaps from many different people in the future. But for right now, happy 2020. This is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you later.